I would like to be able to bring up our next presenters. We have Anna Johnson, who's a policy analyst for the National Center for Youth Law, Patrick Gardner, president of Young Minds Advocacy, Carol Schroeder, the executive director, Alliance for Children and Family Services, Chris Castillo, legislative advocate for the California Academy of Child and Adolescent Psychiatry, making sure that we have enough chairs. All right, we have Gail Johnson-Bond, Executive Director of Families Now, as well as Dane Servine, Program Chief, Children's Services, the County of Santa Cruz. Welcome. Really grateful that all of you are here today and for your continued participation in this important conversation. If it would work for the panel, what we'd like to be able to do is start it off with Ms. Johnson from the National Center for Youth Law, and we're very grateful and going to be doing a review of what other reforms have been brought forward in additional states across the union. So, Ms. Johnson, we're grateful that you're here and you have 3 minutes. Thank you so much.
Okay. Good afternoon, Chair McGuire and Chair Hernandez. Again, from the National Center for Youth Law, thank you for inviting me to testify. Child abuse and neglect often lead to impaired brain development, poor physical, mental, and emotional health, and cognitive and social difficulties. California needs a system that cares, one that addresses the health and well-being of every child from the moment they enter foster care. Our current system is far from the ideal where a child would receive preventive, individualized care that meets their needs. Every child in foster care has experienced some form of trauma, sometimes for years, yet our service delivery system, as you heard, waits to serve foster children until they are in crisis or have developed chronic conditions. We wait to provide services until after a child leaves an emergency room, after they've been kicked out of school or put into juvenile hall. We wait until after they have bounced out of multiple placements or multiple medications fail to solve the root of the issue to deliver any service. These services are often not provided until a child has developed a voice of their own and can speak up about what they need. This is unacceptable. Care coordination and referral should not be left to the foster child and should be provided immediately upon entry into care. We need advocates and staff on the ground to help navigate the disjointed service delivery systems. Better yet, we need comprehensive service delivery that happens where children live and go to school. So how do we get there? The barrier is not in the funding. It's not in the law. It lies on voluntary instead of mandatory monitoring and oversight and the contracting of funds and service providers. Oversight is a state and county responsibility, and it just hasn't been a priority, and hopefully now with this hearing it will be. California has the funding to make quality care a reality. Funds, I'm just going to list a bunch just to make my point here. Funds like Medi-Cal EPSDT, the Mental Health Services Act, California Victim Compensation Program, Title 4B and 4E waivers, the educationally related mental health services, child abuse treatment grants, and the local control funding formula. These all would support a range of services and contracts, but only if the local and state agencies work together to provide comprehensive care. Children in foster care are receiving too many psychotropic medications, and studies show that foster children are more likely to receive multiple medications, and less than half of those children receive any medication management services. State guidelines name these practices as dangerous and inappropriate for children, but our system of care does not operate in that ideal. The current system puts children at risk of serious side effects that can last a lifetime. This is also unacceptable. A system that cares would oversee and ensure medication management, care coordination, treatment plans, first-line psychosocial services and supports, and individualized spending that are happening for every child. When will the departments do their part to oversee safe, appropriate care for children? We need goals, benchmarks, and oversight to develop a system that cares. The state departments and counties must work together with a greater sense of urgency to use the state guidelines, the Global Data Sharing Agreement, the UC Berkeley reporting system in order to track progress towards quality care. They can work to implement policies that are laid out in the series of bills aiming to address the over-medication of foster children. The state and county agencies can and should work with school districts to establish programs that serve children and families in the schools and communities where they grow and develop. Quality oversight measures not just the quality of services, but the quality of providers, as Senator Hernandez has brought up today. In the prescriber community, there are structural and financial incentives in place that encourage over-medication. Doctors are inundated with incentives to prescribe drugs that have not been tested or approved for children. Pharmaceutical companies target doctors specifically who work with foster children.
We have 30 seconds.
Docs are given gifts, research funding, meals, and kickbacks, and there are no parallel incentives for referring and providing mental and behavioral health services. More must be done to work with the prescribers of psychotropic medications. Nicole prepared a handout that describes how states have collected data and work with their prescribers to ensure safer care for foster kids. We can learn from these other states and counteract the impact of pharmaceutical marketing by making the state prescribing guidelines known, working with the medical board to identify outlying prescribers, increasing educational efforts that are aimed at the prescribing level. And the state and counties can also perform case reviews and feedback for docs where dangerous practices are identified. I don't think that's currently happening. But reducing the over-reliance on medication is just the start. A longer-term answer lies in providing quality mental health services in a timely and accessible manner. That is the appropriate response to addressing the trauma these children have experienced and ensuring they have a better chance for a healthy and productive life. California must develop a system that finally cares for children. And in this handout, we spotlight a few states, and Washington, I know you may be familiar with it. They've developed a unique provider delivery service system for foster children to just address the fact that we need comprehensive care. So
thank you so much. No, thank you, Ms. Johnson. Ms. Johnson, do you have additional handouts as well, if anyone from the audience would like to be able to take one home with them?
Yes, I placed the handouts on the back table, and they look like this.
That's perfect. And the reason why we asked Ms. Johnson to be able to bring this forward is that this is an issue that has impacted foster youth across this nation. And different state legislators have brought forward reform measures via legislation that have been enacted and are successful. We don't need to reinvent the wheel, if you will, and there are some great models out there that I know that we're going to be taking a look at. And again, thank you so much. It is now an honor to be able to introduce Mr. Gardner. He's president of the Young Minds Advocacy, and we're grateful that you're here today to be able to share your testimony. You have 3 minutes, sir.
Thank you very much, Senators Hernandez and McGuire. I appreciate the opportunity to be here, and I think it's an important step towards recognizing the problems that we have with the children's mental health system, and to talk a little bit about solutions. The greatest challenge we have when we think about mental health for children, particularly in the foster care system, is how complex the system is. And we've already heard about the laundry list of programs and agencies that may come in contact with foster youth. It's a difficult system to manage. It's a complex system. It has many moving parts. And it's often quite useful to try to come up with a framework with which to evaluate or assess whether we're moving in the right direction or not. And we've already heard about two of the most important elements of determining that success, and one is access to care, and the other is, of course, the quality of care that you get. The other two things one needs to pay attention to is how do these system players collaborate? Do they play well together? Does their work by working together improve outcomes for children, or do they work across purposes and often make children worse off? And then the last issue, of course, is accountability. So I don't have much time. What I want to do is focus on two of the big ones. One is access to care, and the other is quality. And you have a pamphlet in front of you that I'm going to refer to. So my job, I think, on the panel is to kind of take us to sort of the big issue or the big picture. And so the way we determine whether or not we're doing a good job in terms of providing access to care is a measurement called penetration rates, and that's on the third page of the handout that you have. It's titled MHP Services Penetration Rates Comparison Over 10 Years. And what that shows us is, for the top 20 counties, how have we done? Are we getting better? And what a penetration rate is simply of the number of children that are eligible and need care, how many of them actually get it? And so if you have 20% penetration rate, that means 20% of the children who are eligible are receiving services. And so the higher the penetration rate, typically the better your performance is. And if you look at that chart, and we don't have time to go into the details, if you look at the column over on the far right-hand corner, or the far right hand, it says percent change right before year, you'll see that virtually all but three of the numbers there are in red, which means that over the last 10 years, the penetration rates have declined. That means fewer children proportionately get services now than they did 10 years ago. So one of the challenges we have, of course, is that over time, we're not getting better as a system in terms of delivering care. We're getting worse. More to the point of how we think about children who might be of the level of care that requires psychotropic medications is the KDA program, or the KDA services. And if you look on page 2 of the charts, on the second half, the bottom half, it says KDA services growth 2013-2015. And I am one of the attorneys that brought the KDA case, and I've worked on it for more than 10 years. And about 3.5 years ago, the case settled. And at that point, the state of California said, we will provide these intensive home and community-based services to all the children who are eligible. And our best estimate at this point is that something on the order of 20,000 children in California are eligible. Now remember, these are all foster youth, okay? They're all foster youth with high-end needs, and the service is specifically intended to keep children out of group homes. So if there's a service that can help to avoid the abuse or overuse of psychotropic medications, KDA services is the place to go. And yet, what we've seen in the 3.5 years of the rollout for KDA is that the capacity of the system is just under 4,000 children. So that means only 1 in 5 children who are eligible and need these services 3.5 years into implementation are receiving that care. So those are sort of kind of big picture ideas about access. So we clearly have some serious access problems. Let's talk about quality for a moment. If there's a magic bullet in this area of children's mental health, it's quality of care. And the reason why I say that is because our system doesn't appear to provide high-quality care as a system. And the best example of that is if you look at page 1 of the chart, you'll see on the bottom it says percent clients improve. What this is a county system from 2012. And what it purports to show is that each of those blue diamonds on the chart is a distinct program in that county. And this is a measure of all of the county-funded mental health programs. And as you can see on the left-hand scale, the Y scale goes from 0 to 100. That's the percentage of children who improved during the year that they were in care, during the year that they were receiving services under these programs. And the blue dots tell you, so for example, the ones closest to the 0 say that for those 2 programs, 0% of the children participating in that program that year improved. Okay, and then you can see the programs are scaled across. So some of the programs, 20% of the children improved, some of the programs, 40% of the children improved, and the best performing programs for the county showed 50% improvement. Now, the difficulty with this chart is that when they average performance for the entire system, they get the star, which is right at about 24, 25%. Well, that means that, and then you see the red line, it says natural rate of improvement. Well, because mental health is a up and down experience.
I have about 30 seconds.
Okay, you expect that children will improve about 1/3 of the time. So the system for this entire county was actually realizing worse than background improvements. So that gives one real pause to ask the question, okay, so what are we buying for our money? What are we getting? I don't have time to go through the other charts, but I'd be happy to talk to people afterwards. But I think, Senator, that you're exactly on target when you say what we need to do is we need to measure our performance. We need to understand what it is we're buying, what we're getting, what are the outcomes that we're receiving. And only then are we going to be able to improve the quality of care such that we can actually confidently say that we're doing better than if we didn't do anything at all.
No, I appreciate that. And I just two quick questions really quickly here is talk about in regards to access, biggest factors of decline related to access is what? As you're just showing us, you said only 3 counties. If you want to talk about why we're seeing such a rapid decline.
Well, it's not entirely clear why we're seeing a decline. There's a chart at the very back of the pamphlet that shows spending by the counties, by each county over the last 3 fiscal years. And at the very top of the page, it shows statewide spending. And you'll see that it's going from $1.3 billion to $1.5 billion up to $1.66 billion. So for the last 3 fiscal years, the actual amount of money available was growing, and yet 18 counties reduced spending in the first year, and 14 counties reduced spending over both years during that same time. Is it because they're afraid that the money won't be there when they do spend it? Is it because they write contracts that don't allow providers to actually provide care to all of the children who are eligible? Is it is the money being siphoned off to other parts of the system? It's difficult to know with certainty, fundamentally because we don't monitor it well enough to actually know what the answers are. And honestly, for a system that's, depending upon whether you're looking at children only or children and adults, between $3 and $6 billion, it would behoove the state to spend some money on understanding what we're buying and what we're getting for it, rather than the system we have now, which is we have to sort of take it on faith.
And I think that's the biggest challenge that we have is measuring success, right, of if we're not going back into the system and looking at those variables. And on that front graph that you have here, can you talk about how they measured improvement on that?
So this is one of the best tools that are available to measure both what we should be doing and how well we're doing. It's called the CANS, which is Child and Adolescent Needs and Strengths tool. About 22, I think, counties use it now. It's a bit of a patchwork, so they might use it for one system. They might use it just for foster care. They might just use it for mental health. It actually can be applied pretty much across the spectrum. For example, there's a pilot program that's going on right now in Alameda County to build that tool around commercial sexual exploitation of youth. So there are lots of applications for it. The other thing that's particularly useful about it is it's scalable. So you can use it to understand what's going on at the clinical level, at the program level, and at the state level. So in 2 states now that I've been working on litigation where the states have been involved in KDA-type litigation, Washington and Idaho, both states have agreed as a statewide program to implement CANS on a web-based platform so that they have, immediate access to that information and that management capability.
No, I really appreciate that. Thank you so much. Senator, please.
So what I'm hearing is that you believe there are the resources there, but that the accountability isn't, the access isn't, and more importantly, the services aren't appropriate. That's kind of what I'm hearing. And if you had the magic wand and you can recreate this system, how would you recreate it? Would you do it through the county system, the way we currently are?
Well, I guess the simple answer to that for vulnerable populations that don't have political power, their rights are not going to be upheld unless something's mandatory. And what you see in a county-based system is that the state says, we'd like you to do this, will you do this, could you do this, you should do this, we've got guidelines about it, but we're not going to mandate it, we're not going to pay for that population. Foster youth have very little political power and will, and unless you mandate it as a state, it's not going to happen for them.
Now, explain to me what you mean by mandating. Mandating the services, mandating accountability,
mandating things like, in the handout that I have, there's Maryland. It mandates that you have to, if you put a child on a psych med, you have to do a monitoring visit. 100% of their kids have monitoring visits because you can't medicate without it. It's no longer allowed to hope for the ideal. They've made themselves the ideal. because that's the only way to ensure care.
So what you're saying is that you would say have transparency in state/county government and hold them accountable for what they're providing for these individuals.
That's right.
Okay, thank you.
All right.